Whenever you're ready, Micah. All right, thank you. Welcome everyone to the February 2nd NSA Ad Hoc meeting. Thank you for being here. And we're going to start off this meeting with me sharing my screen. We go over the agenda.
Commissioner Farmer,
Yes?
you do have one person in the audience, and it's Miss Asada.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Miss Asada, if at any time you'd like to speak, just raise your hand and I will unmute you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So we got everybody here except for one. And we just wanted to do a quick recap of the CMC. I wasn't able to attend because I had another meeting that I had to attend and I couldn't get out of. But I listened to pretty much the whole thing. And what we were talking about briefly before we got started is just that I thought it came off very well. I was really pleased with what our commission chair said, with what he proceeded with saying at the CMC. I thought it was perfect. The other stuff that I was at least thinking about maybe saying, touching on, I don't think that was the. I think what he decided to say was good, and I thought that everybody from the city side presented very well. That came off good, and the what is it the May 27th follow up date. I thought that was a good sign that maybe they're ready to pull the trigger on doing something different then if everything goes according to plan or looks a little bit better. And I just thought it was presented very well from every side, prosecuting attorneys, the defense, commission, everybody. So well done, Ricardo. I thought you did a very good job and looked sharp, and everyone there did. I thought that Michelle Phillips, as the constitutional policing person for the city, I thought that came off very good. It was good, at least for me to hear, like what her daily schedule is and stuff like that. And everyone presented well. So that was my feedback. We don't want to spend too much time on this. But Ricardo, do you have anything to say about it or anyone else?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Farmer. Yeah, I wasn't sure how it came off. Folks that are with me and we're looking at some of the scripts and stuff know that at times, my gift is I'm a motivational speaker and I speak from the heart, man. And so whenever I have to follow a script, I always tend to veer off and black out and don't quite know what the hell I'm saying until afterwards. And I'm like, well, I hope I got it all in. But I think overall, we felt good about it. I think the city's presenting well to the federal judge in terms of how we're all working together. But now, the onus is on OPD to complete some of these tasks and to make up some ground. And it's the ball's kind of in their ballpark. And I'm really glad actually that the mayor, one of the comments that she made is that she actually pointed out, if I'm not mistaken, that there's still work to do, right? And even though that we're heading in the right direction, we still may not be at the place where we're ready to get off completely. And I'm glad she was the one that said that, right? Because often the commission is the one that are pointing that out, and then we get hammered for being like throwing a wrench into everything and like ruining the city's plans of like potentially getting off this thing. And so it's I think it was an honest presentation from everybody. I think that the judge, heard it loud and clear, and I think it's also puts it back on us to do our part to continue working with the levers that we have control over and that we're able to influence to really help push OPD over that finish line. But at the end of the day, it's going to be on them. And there's structural things, there's other issues that are going on that we got to address and continue to look at and support. But overall, I just appreciate everybody that made it out there, vice chair, our chief of staff, and folks that that made it in person. Both IG and Director Lawson were both there as well too, and so it just means a lot for us to just all be there and be present and supporting each other. So yeah, I feel pretty good about it and excited about kind of the next steps and laying that chart forward.
Excellent. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Well, I say I think it went well. I think the problem is going to be though is the disparity in discipline.
Mm,
and and how the city's going to address and resolve that. I think, they'll be able to deal with task two, the 180 days or 6 months. I mean, you could put resources at that and get it resolved. But the disparity in discipline within the department, I don't know if they've identified the cause
hmm.
to remedy
Yeah.
the disparity. And I know that's what Plaintiffs' Counsel is truly concerned about too. So I'm not sure how that's going to be addressed in a short time period.
Yeah, it sounded like Chief Beer was still kind of figuring it out, but they have some time to figure it out. And I'm not sure about Task Five either. That's like been one of the things. Like you said, you can throw resources at Task Two. It sounded like Chief Beer said that that's what they intended to do, but Task Five, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And I thought it. That's the first time. I've been watching these meetings for about 4 or 5 years. That's the first time I've seen a mayor come to one of these and actually, like, I don't know, appear to really be involved in it. Like, really try. She's like really trying to figure it out to some extent. Um, that was my impression, at least. All the other times I've heard a mayor come there and speak, and I'm not trying to bash any other previous mayors. It's just my impression. It just seemed like, um, they not well prepared for the topic at hand. So,
Yeah, and I would add, Commissioner, is I think the biweekly NSA group meetings have been really
mm,
fruitful for her to because there's you could understand a little bit of it, but once you're in it, then you really understand the depth of it, right? And having these biweekly meetings has allowed her to really learn, ask questions, be curious, and so yeah, I echo that sentiment as well, that she's fully involved, and I think the courts see that as well, and so I think it's just a good sign for all of us moving forward. And in regards to the disparities in discipline. Um, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. I'm still trying to think about kind of like what that means, what we see when we see discipline, right? Was it just an outlier year? I mean, it is hard just to pull numbers from just one year and say, okay, well, it's a reflection of overall department, right? If they look at other years, and this kind of seems to be a little bit of an anomaly. I know the 25 report's going to be coming out, 2025 report's going to be coming out soon. So I'll be interested to see what those numbers look like. And if that pattern continues, then certainly is going to be something that I think may require like an all hands on deck thinking about like why is this happening and what's leading to this. But I'm also kind of crossing my fingers. Like I hope these numbers kind of course correct a little bit, and it was just part of the ebbs and flows and just maybe a weird year. But I definitely want to figure out what we can do here. Both through our work with CPRA and the IGs and ourselves as commissioners to really kind of help dig into that and figure out what is causing this.
mhm,
Because I mean, the numbers didn't look good, right? It's like
mhm.
those disparities were like, wow, that's quite alarming, right? And so again, we don't know if it's just, yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. But I'm interested to see how we're going to move forward and maybe support that. And really, the turnaround in May is going to be happening real quick, right? So
Mhm.
it really depends on what's happening in 2025 and then what we can identify to really make an impact on that if those numbers continue. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. What happened in 2025? What's happening now? That's going to depend on what those numbers are going to look like. And that one's always been a bit, I don't know, I don't want to say mystery, but there's always been not a lot of information out about that one. It was in deferment for a long time, on and off, because they were trying to get their new vision system installed, and that took a long period of time. So frequently throughout those quarterly monitor statements, it would be like in deferment. And then you had the situation about maybe 3 or 4 years ago when the OBOA had that Hillard Heinz consultant do that study where it showed that black officers were being disciplined at like a significantly higher rate than everybody else. And then they came back out and said that they fixed that issue. I'm not sure. We need to see more data around that. So I don't know if it's hard to say what's an anomaly, what isn't, because when information does come out, it's these different things, or it's been in deferment. At least that's my experience. So,
And I don't want to just be throwing my own theories and guessing and stuff out there, but I will say this, the two shooters in the Alex Preti case in Minnesota came out,
mhm.
and both have Latino last names. It's like it's it's mind blowing, right? And something happens when folks, and I know I get on my people all the time, like y'all join the force or y'all try to over simulate, right? And what happens in that process, right? But I don't know. I'm just pointing out, just like weird stuff happens, and like and I'm, I can't say much more than like some of the behavior we see in some of the discipline cases, but it's like we see some not really good behavior from folks that look like us, and so I think there's some deeper root cause issues that we also have to look at. I don't know if statistics could tell the story, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to just start guessing and throwing stuff out there, but I mean, I'll just point that out, man, that those names just came out. I'm just like, geez, it's not like these quote unquote racist white cops that are doing this, right? It's
Well, it's the
sometimes
system,
that looks like us.
Institution itself is racist. We're talking about a racist institution
right?
teaching folks racist practices, no matter what our ethnic or racial identity is. And, it's a means to control. And then, when you also think about that kind of stuff, I mean, yeah, we all do. There's also this way where I know some folks, personally Latino, that they're getting paid so much to even get that job. It's wild what I've heard, but I did check in about the racial bias, the biases internally in the disparities. And as we'll see what it uncovers. I mean, it doesn't, as far as what they've reported, it doesn't seem to be an exact correlation like black folks being harder on black folks or white folks being harder on black folks. It doesn't, there's not a theme. So we need to figure out what is happening. And I think for our lens is, policy, practices, trainings, and then also, the way discipline looks. But they said so far it's no real outlier themes that can be attributed to the disparities, but it has to be something, so we'll see what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Just like you said, I agree. It's the system. Anybody can buy into that and still fall into the same pitfalls that everybody else does. So,
See what the numbers say. It could be a more complicated situation, as you said, than just simply putting resources at. Because I just said CIPRA, we see the problem, and it's one of the things that this department has to acknowledge is part of the problem is assignments within the department, right? You have task force that are given certain position jobs and tasks, and if you're putting black officers out there and doing certain conduct, you're going to get more complaints and you're going to uphold more conduct problems. So, I mean, part of it, but what we see is what's going on within the departments for assignments and who they have to with
That's,
certain tasks.
yeah, that makes sense. And who's in leadership and who isn't, and who's gonna
Exactly.
get the,
Who's subject to discipline because of their jobs, as opposed to being in office where you're not really subject to discipline.
yeah.
yeah, and like how people have said in the past, like a lot of it depends on who you know in the department and stuff like that. I don't know how that's going to play into it either. But any other thoughts? IG, any thoughts? Micah, anyone?
So I don't have any thoughts right now. I mean, I'm in a little bit of traffic. There's traffic on the boulevard that I'm walking, trying to get back to my office, my home office.
All right, no
But
worries.
nothing right now.
I do have a question. You guys were just talking about disparity and, there's not really any trends, or we still need to figure that out. Is that an opportunity for maybe IG to look into that? Because I know you guys usually direct, are supposed to really say, hey, guys, this might be something to look at. Is this an opportunity to do that, or no? That's not how that works.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I think that's a great opportunity to start looking at the REPA data. And I was actually planning a meeting with my staff tomorrow, actually, to have that discussion and to actually start looking at REPA data, and be able to report out specifically on the data and what we see.
That would be
Especially
great
the
because
trend, because
it'll help.
the trend has is not as bad as it was, to be honest with you. When I looked at some of the internal audits data, as far as the amount of officers pulling over black people and things like that, and black and brown people, the trend did kind of slow down. But I think that's all good information for me to gather and report out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your thoughts, Micah. Thank you for that response, IG. All right, let's move forward and discuss what we talked about last week, a little bit the week before. We don't have to do these in this order, but I'm going to. We're just going to start off with the opioid MOU recommendation. So I believe that they may be finalizing the new opioid MOU this June. And I know previously, years ago when this was looked at, and this has been said throughout the years by people in different ad hocs who have come to police commission meetings, police commissioners themselves, that there are things within the MOU that can prevent compliance, or that there are things that you can put in there that can help drive compliance. Now, I have like a bunch of things that I've wanted to have put in there in the next MOU throughout the years. But I want to kind of like start with one thing that's been brought up here in our meetings frequently, or at least I think is something that we may have a consensus on, and that we've discussed or it's been mentioned on and off over the past year, is some way to combat the narratives. Now, I know that putting something on paper, that oftentimes a culture eats policy for lunch, right? You know how they say that? But I think maybe having some sort of stipulation in there, because one of the knocks on the NSA is that while this is an agreement that the department entered into and the city entered into with the plaintiff's attorneys to avoid actual federal oversight consent decree, that they agreed on doing these tasks. Obviously, that has not worked out. And one of the knocks is that there was never buy-in from the union on all these specific tasks, why, the reason for the negotiated settlement agreement in general. And I feel like one of the things that we're constantly, or people constantly feel like they have to push back on, which is a cultural issue, is narratives undermining police commission work, for example. And, the police commission didn't exist, back in 2003 when the agreement actually was put into place. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to request, they don't have to do anything, is to request as some sort of statement to go in there that supports how things actually have gone from our perspective and experience, us working jointly with OPD, that maybe combat some of the narratives. I don't have a statement pre-written. All the other research that I'd done before had to do with other things, like asking officers or requiring officers to purchase their own personal liability insurance to prevent instances of misconduct. I got, a bunch of things like that, but I would like to maybe focus on one thing or a couple of things. What are people's thoughts on requesting having some sort of statement like that put in there? Or do people have other ideas? Or do people not want to pursue this any further? The city attorney's office did give us permission to, send them stuff that we wanted to potentially see put in there. So I think this is an opportunity that we should take. And I don't think we should spend too much time on it, but those are just my thoughts. What are other people's thoughts? one? Okay. Well, I don't see anything so far. And maybe one of the things, one of the issues might be is that, here's the opioid MOU. I got it up here somewhere. Well, maybe that's not it. No, that's not it either. But I do have it. Maybe one of the things is that a lot of people haven't actually looked at this thing. Um, uh, and I had it. God, I can't believe I can't find it now. I did have it up here before the meeting started. But was someone going to say something? I thought I heard someone start to say something. Is this something that people want to pursue or not? If you don't want to pursue it, please tell me. We don't have to spend time on it.
If we don't want to pursue which part, Omar? Sorry, Commissioner.
Recommendations for the opioid MOU that could help drive compliance. Here it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Right.
we should be a part of this. We should
Yeah.
participate.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So here is just to help us get you start thinking. Here is some research that I did years ago that like everybody was on board with this. And I'm not the only person that did research on, like a bunch of people did. And these are the type of recommendations. Like the thing about the insurance isn't on here. And they can take that or reject it. I mean, but my whole feeling is if you don't ask, you'll never know. And like one of our goals is to try to prevent misconduct, to protect as a way to protect the community. And there are a lot of things that we could do to have put in there to help with that. Here's something about overtime pay. We could look into something like this, and like I'll just read it then. Cut the pay rate for overtime from 1.5 to 1 times the hourly rate. Employees called back to work after they've completed their shift and left, or who are required to make a job-related court appearance on off-duty hours, shall be compensated for 1.5 hours instead of 2.5 hours. All right, and I can go. Okay, is a lot of information here, and there's a bunch of references that go with this. These are the types of things that I could present to you. I mean, just from my perspective, things that I've personally researched or other people have personally researched that we feel would help drive compliance. But all this stuff aside, I've heard people as a part of this ad hoc frequently mention, and I agree, that how the narratives sometimes undermine our work. That like one of the narratives is that we're somehow tying the hands of the police by policies that we've created or implemented or changed that are tying their hands. I think some sort, and which isn't true, and I think some sort of statement that the union can get behind or agree on to put us all on the same page could help potentially combat the narratives. Maybe not fully, completely, but to help start to combat it. Ricardo. Yeah.
I guess that's the part where I was thinking when we had that little moment of silence for a second, because I don't want to conflate our tasks of providing the city some concrete recommendations for them to be able to negotiate with this upcoming MOU with too much of this combating the narrative piece of it. I think combating the narrative, one, it's there's certain things that are gonna, no matter how much we try to partner, there's gonna be certain interests that they're gonna just
gonna do it. Yeah.
There's certain segments in the public that are gonna push certain narratives regardless of what we do. And I think for that piece, we need to just be clear on whether and what spaces and what work do we do that we could uplift and continue to always just just chart the way of our own narrative that combats these false some of these false claims when they are issued. But I think for the MOU discussion, I think we need to look at some tangible things that tie back to officer wellness, like some of our charter mandates, right? One of the biggest things is officer wellness and overtime hours and the correlation between that. And we don't know the type of impact that has on um, on on potential MOR violations, on customer service, right? If you got an officer working 23 hours a day, then the next day working 16 hours a day, and we don't know what kind of like customer service that's happening. We don't know what kind of pressure that, like, what type of ripple effect that has in the department if they're not following their own policies around overtime, right? We've also heard these issues around the GPS in the cars, right? And why can't we know? So there's like some tangible things that I think we could start to identify that can maybe help untangle some of these root cause issues that may lead to them, not, further just not being able to get out of compliance, basically, right? And so, because there's these underlining things that are going on, these structural issues that just lead to challenged policing or just deficits, or in certain ways, people would argue that are, bankrupting the city, right? And so, I think that's different. And when we go down that road, inherently people are going to be saying we're going after them and that we're not helping policing, right? And so, I mean, we got to continue doing our work and showing how that's supporting better policing in Oakland, and at the same time really, taking on some of these challenging discussions around what are some of these root cause issues that we could identify that the city really has to negotiate. And at the end of the day, we're not at the negotiating table, right? All we can do is take them up on the one kind of opening of the window that they provided for us in terms of providing some recommendations that, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard that, I don't know if OPC's ever provided concrete recommendations for the city to think about in those negotiations. So I think, those are just two things that I think we should just kind of separate in terms of combating the narrative and really just coming up with some concrete MOU recommendations for the city.
Okay, that all sounds great, and I agree with everything that you said. Those are like requiring the GPS. I think that would be a great recommendation, and I'm more so providing recommendations like concrete things like that. Um, but I was trying to start from a place where I thought we could all maybe agree on some other stuff, and maybe we could I don't know. We can come back to that later. But no, I like all that. Any other thoughts on this?
I just simply saying I agree, and I think we have to address this. This is a major issue,
Hmm.
especially dealing with the overtime, and not only budget-wise, but also to services to the city. I mean, if you have officers making $700,000 a year and so forth, that limits the number of other officers you can have on a department and what you're able to pay. We have to look at this issue, I think, as organizations, and the impact it has on the city of Oakland in terms of services.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. We have to look at overtime. I think it's the priority and one of the priorities, and how it's connected to mental health and how it's connected to discipline. If folks are getting complaints, and then also, is that during overtime hours, or are they still able to get a bunch of overtime hours even though they're getting potentially getting some sustained complaints regarding their behaviors.
right. Yeah, no, the overtime thing is also, as you pointed out, it's a part of the mental health and wellness issue. And, like it's been said in the past frequently, to have a cap on overtime, it seems like every year the department is tens of millions of dollars over their budget. And that prevents other departments from being funded, which sometimes, if those departments have been, had more funding, uh, been able to produce things that'll improve public safety. And public safety doesn't just have to do with, police. It has to do with the availability of a whole holistic list of things that people need in the community to live, to improve their quality of life. right? So yeah, I think maybe if we focus something to do with overtime, and that we've already looked at that a little bit in terms of wellness that can tie into that, something to do with overtime. Maybe we can make that information part of our findings for, and this is what I was always thinking about the document that the chair has started about our budget recommendations, that those findings for what we're talking about now, those could be in there rather than maybe some of the other stuff that the commission hasn't dived into before, because I don't believe they've ever made recommendations for the opioid MOU, but I don't know exactly. So I think something like that to do with overtime, wellness, how overtime ties into wellness. It has to do with fitness for duty, um, and yeah, maybe
And
some
task
other things.
45, disparities, task 45, disparities in discipline, right?
Yeah, how do we tie? Right, how do we tie that into it? How do we tie?
Because I'm
Actually,
guessing, but that officer that clocked in 700K,
Mhm.
I'm wondering if
yeah,
those are all on the streets or if that's administrative. And if you get the juicy
yeah,
opportunities to clock overtime and not be on the streets, while some officers are getting the hardest assignments, and there's that right there could lead to some disparities, right?
Well, I think it was 700K admin. I think he was mainly reading reports. When you figure that's 6 officers you could have on the street. So you
right.
just think about that in terms of services.
Okay,
We should also look at GPS too. Don't let, I mean, that's the issue
yeah,
that Chair brought up previously, but I think, from our perspective as CIPRA, that's been an issue in a number of times, that inability to identify where a vehicle was or where officer was at a given point is essential. And most professions now that involve vehicles do use GPS in those vehicles, and most all departments do. So the technologies they're in the cars. It's just a matter of actually using the technology.
yeah. It's an overtime and accountability issue. Like, where are your people during this time? Um, and we have to be able to see what's going on. There has to be some accountability. I saw somebody put something in the chat. I'm trying to, let's see what this is.
I just want to reiterate what Lawson was saying about GPS. I mean, even your mailman has GPS, not on the go, but on their scanners. So even if the police officers were objecting the, GPS on their vehicles for some reason, be tied into the radio system one way or another, and that way those officers that are quote unquote not on in vehicles but on bicycles or motorcycles or even walking keep track of all of their whereabouts.
Yeah, exactly. Very good point. Thank you for making that point. Um, and my whole thing about uh, our taxpayer dollars having to pay for misconduct settlements, um, I just think that's a really big issue, and that's why I say that they should be required, or maybe after a certain period of with some issues, maybe with officer or whatever, or that they have to buy their own personal liability insurance. And I don't know, that's just something for people to think about as well. But I think definitely the overtime thing, uh, that also as a mental health issue, the GPS, and also tying that into overtime as well. It seems like we have a consensus to at least start with those two things. So I think from here, actually, you're going to say something else?
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt or anything. But
Yeah, yeah.
when I was at BART, we actually did an overtime audit. And I think ideally, if I had the staff and if we were to get through this first audit next year, could be a focus on specifically an overtime audit. Who's making this money? Where is it going? And take a good look at that, as well as auditing the amount of officers that are currently on administrative leave pending Scully hearings and other things. And that's a direct impact on the financial impact that the city is going through, as well as a public safety thing. And so I think eventually doing an overtime audit might be a wise thing to do.
All
Just
right.
point out the number of officers who are on admin leave, they report out weekly on their agendas for the chief, and as for income, I mean salaries, they're all public employees. You can pull up salaries for all Oakland employees, and if you do, you'll see that most all the top employees earners are OPD
Okay, perfect.
overwhelmingly.
Okay. So I think I just taken down some notes on what people said. So in terms of overtime, IG potentially doing an audit, is that right? But how does that tie? Okay, well that's something that you can do. Is It's great. That's like a follow up item for the commission. But in terms of making uh, a memorandum of understanding recommendation, well, requiring GPS, is that right?
I would say we
Yes,
should, yes.
requiring GPS. Yeah. And not necessarily just tied to their vehicles, but potentially tied to their radio system. That way,
Oh,
we
yeah,
could keep track of all the officers.
okay, so requiring GPS on patrol vehicles, vessels, and radio system. Okay, I put in here cap overtime. What do people think about that? Putting a cap on it?
I don't know if it's realistic
Yeah, I don't know if
to
it's really.
start, especially not to start there. I think we need to find out more. I mean, we do have the reality of not enough officers, and so overtime is gonna happen. And I think we need to, aside from a cap, understand what's happening, who's doing what, and
Right.
also what are some policies and practices more so than overtime, like space in between, what you can and can't do, how if it's related at all, in what ways to regulation and sustainability of their own mental health, and also as it's related to any complaints or things that they have had that are, justified. And I think that we also I think this kind of stuff is important, but I think we need to also, I would love for us to get back to updating this template and at least have a draft pretty soon. I know I have it, but there's some questions and things that they can report on regularly that we could start to see even in our meetings. So for instance, we could get report outs if we update the template appropriately to see like how many officers were on duty these 2 weeks? Like if we start having it being shared transparently to us and to the public regularly, we could start to see what we need to evaluate to see, and ask curious questions. Like, is it, you know, because in reality, when you think about overtime, I do agree to some of it, like time and a half versus just time at time is kind of crazy. But aside from that, if they are truly short staffed and they need that one person there, I don't know if that's true. I'm not arguing for, I'm not defending it or not, but there's other things that I think we can do or need to do, because what we're saying is if they're saying the money will be spent by having more people versus we just only get this overtime because we don't have people versus, you know, admin staff are taking a long time to do tasks longer than reasonable, and then they're getting extra and extra time. I don't know. It's just super layered, but I would love for us to update our template to reflect some of these things we want to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you. The whole cap overtime thing, maybe that's not a place to start. That is how I feel, that they should put a cap on it, but it's probably not realistic to start there. And then I just wanted to highlight some things about how overtime and the mental health side hasn't ties into the sleep and fatigue management side of the house in terms of mental health and wellness. Just so you can see, these are some things that we looked at before as a commission, tracking moonlighting hours. We discussed quarterly overtime overview, numbers of officers engaged in excessive overtime. What is excessive? What do we deem to be excessive? What does the department say is excessive? Do they have a definition for that? Fatigue risk mitigation, is that being conducted? Shift management strategies in place due to decrease in staff. what is that for the, how does that look for the department? You know, this isn't criticism of them. This is curiosity, trying to figure out what this is so that we can make an informed decision on how this issue is impacted. Sleep optimization program. Do they have stuff like that? That all ties in, to me, ties in to overtime. It has to do with fatigue management. So, but I'm glad you brought the template because that's the other thing on the agenda for tonight. So that's a good segue. Let's jump into that. And let's say for next time, or maybe I'll put out an email in between now and our next meeting with just like a summary of what we talked about. And then if people can start to brainstorm some next steps, what they think the recommendations should look like, please start to do that between now and the next meeting. We'll have a follow-up discussion. Was someone going to say something? Tony, were you going to say something? Okay. All right. So with the template, and I appreciate you, Shawana, for bringing this up. I know that you started to look at this again, trying to bring it up. Here it is. But yeah, I think we need to make some. Think this needs to be done. This and the opioid MOU recommendations. Ideally, I think this should be done by, I don't know, our first or second meeting in March. I think it's totally doable. I don't think that the opioid MOU recommendation should take that long. We can spend half the meeting discussing that, half the meeting discussing this, just like we're kind of doing tonight. And I know that last time when I started to go through this thing line by line, people weren't necessarily up for that. But I know that the IG has given some input already for this from the past that we still have. You all, we've talked about KPIs in the past. I just would like to ask that information around like the task two, status, for example, within this template. We just want to get information about these cultural tasks, the tasks that are supposed to drive cultural change. Put that information in there. If we decide to extract certain numbers or whatever and try to score it in a way that is educational to the public and the commissioners, I think that would be helpful. That's the whole point. It's not like, that's the point, is what I'm saying. So those are the things that I am going to suggest to put into the template. Shawana, have you had a chance to look at this a little bit more in depth since we were last talking about this? Or
Yeah, I have looked at it, but I didn't note my changes. But I also was looking at um the report that we require from OPD and some stuff we need and then I was hoping I had paused because I know Director Lawson said there's more information we could get, and I hadn't discerned yet what would be public and what would be closed session stuff, but I want to add those things on there if possible. And most specifically, I want a policy review section. Like what is the policy that they have? For instance,
like,
around that we did that harassment. What's the policy for that? What's the training schedule look like? How are officers trained on that? Like policies that really relate to our role in constitutional policing, and then each time they come to a meeting, they could decide which one they want to report out on if we don't have a priority. But and maybe we start with I mean, they have a bunch of policies, so I know we don't want the whole book in there, but specifically highly rated ones, we highly, ones that have a really strong impact. And I think Director Lawson's voice would be important there, and things that are blurred in terms of a training plan or how policy they report that it isn't clear. Oh, I didn't understand it to mean that. Those kind of things, I think, feel like a real priority, especially as it relates to discipline.
okay. All right. Excellent. So that's great. So your recommendations, at least right now, when we're fully flesh them out, will have to do, or at least probably are going to have to do with policy, policy impacts on, constitutional policing, I would think. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
maybe policy follow-ups on or just follow-ups on policies that the commission. This discussion has gone on. I've heard this go on for years between the public and the commission, saying, "Hey, can we get a follow-up on the impact of that policy that we reviewed, or can the commission audit it, or something like that?" So I think that this is really good, and we don't have to have concrete, every policy from the get-go. But like you're saying, we can start somewhere and give the department a list, and they can pick and choose what they're ready to present on, at any.
Yeah. Name the policy, name the training plan that goes with so officers understand that policy regularly. And then we could talk about it. Director Lawson has his hand up. I mean, you
Director
need to
Lawson.
change the color of that hand, Director Lawson.
It's neutral, so that's
What I was going to say is it's a timely conversation because actually at CIPRA we're talking about bringing to you some policies that we have concerns about based upon the complaints that we see. There are a couple of policies that we think need to be addressed by the commission and OPD as to whether they need to be changes, and also look at the impact those policies have, which we think can be problematic. So,
Mm-hmm.
we can definitely recommend specific policies that should be brought to the commission's attention. It's just a matter of how we want to deal with it. Us to, do you want the OPD to present to you what the policy is, and then we can tell you more about the implications of those policies, or just a matter of how the commission wants to handle it?
okay. Well, I would think that maybe you tell us, you give us your recommendations, and then when that policy, whenever OP is going to present on that, we can request your presence. All right.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think that's a good starting place. And you can give us recommendations on policies, Director Lawson, that you really are like, you guys can't see eye to eye on that stuff because it is well within our purview to create policy, update policy, make sure there's training associated with that. And so I think we need to be in front of that.
Yeah. And okay, so a robust review of this, or just revamp of this policy section. And then I would like to do a robust implementation of just like a constitutional policing section regarding the tasks designed to drive sustained cultural change. And even if we're out of the NSA come, in at the end of May, it's still going to be in the sustainability period. And these are still things. This is still like the blueprint for why of like the issues that the department has historically had. So it's still going to be applicable in terms of constitutional policing in our department. So there's that, and I see there's a comment in the chat. I will get to that in a second. And then there's the budget, right? So we just talked about overtime, getting quarterly updates maybe, or something to that effect. Maybe an update on where they're at with GPS technology, stuff like that, stuff that we're going to recommend for having in the MOU. And this is just speaking to pre-existing sections, and then we can get, and then Skelly data. I think we want to keep this in here and I think the IG already put in a little bit of input last time, so I would recommend that we would keep this here and then just maybe update it to reflect what the IG has worked on and is working on moving forward. And then there's probably going to be some sections we want to get rid of. IAB cases, that all has to do with the constitutional policing section in my mind. Maybe this is the detail we want. Maybe we need to update this. And then there's going to be some sections we're probably going to want to take out. I don't know why this post-certification stuff is an SB, Senate Bill 2, whatever that is. I don't know that needs to be something that needs to stay in here for every meeting. The juvenile cases, I know that I like hearing this information as well. But this could also not necessarily be something that they report on in every meeting. I'm not sure if maybe we have a section that combines some of these things that are important, not necessarily like a
Yeah, I would say so too. It's just like a highlight section or how's it going section, and maybe they report out on some of that stuff quarterly, but
yeah.
it's not, the biggest challenge at this time that relates to the stuff we need to get done.
Yeah, and I think this collaboration with CPRE section, I'll let you speak to that, Director Lawson. Collaboration with the community, I think that's important. That's one of the things we're charged with is building trust between the department and the community. New laws affecting OPD, that could go in that section that we just were referring to. Um, yeah, and we'll have to continue to go through this. So I would like everybody when I put out the email about what we discussed in terms of the opioid MOU, to also as like a homework thing, just to look at this and come to the next meeting with what your recommendations are, any omissions, things like that to talk about. And we'll spend half the meeting talking about this and the other half of the meeting talking about the opioid MOU recommendations. And I'll have a plan of action written out for us to complete this by sometime in March. And I guess if we have to adjust or course correct, then we will. And then I want to see any comments on that. Okay, there's a couple comments in the chart. Okay, so in the chat, Ricardo says, in regards to policies for this, upcoming policies needing revisions, impact of new policies and those revised. Exactly, yeah, exactly like we were talking about. Rolling review of policies that have direct impact on culture change and constitutional policing. I agree. And very important to hear CPRA's input, correct. The more info, the better, but they may not need to report out on everything. But updated numbers are important for public. Yes, numbers are important. And I think potentially taking some of this information and creating our own KPIs like we discussed to make it easily digestible for commissioners and the public to understand this. I think that's a professional, concrete way for us all to be on the same page. Does anyone disagree? Okay, I don't see any hands. All right, is there any public comment on this, Micah?
None that I see, and no hands raised. Mrs. Sada. Oh, no, there she is. She's really quick. Here you go. I'm going to take you off mute. Welcome, Mrs. Sada.
Thank you, and thank you for all of the hard work by this body. I'm concerned about the NSA and getting away from the original intent of the NSA. And that intent had to do with excessive force, racial profiling, falsifying reports. They had a couple of other issues that specifically were part of the NSA. And I keep hearing frequently now that the NSA has to do with constitutional policing. So I don't see anybody looking at the stop data to see where we are with racial profiling. I don't even see any discussion on racial profiling. And I just want to give you this little bit of history. 119 individuals filed the NSA complaint, and 118 were African Americans. The 4 officers who were involved in what they call the raiders, 2 were Latinos, 1 was Filipino, and the other was white. So, we're not looking at white people. And I get upset when people say black and brown experiences with police officers as if they all are the same, and it's not. Just going to the issue very briefly about overtime, I was out taken back. This article in Oakland Side about the vice president of the police union earning over $463,000 in overtime. $100,000 of that money went for him spending time going over traffic collision reports. Half of the overtime could not be documented. there are no documents to support it. So this is outrageous with the overtime issue. And I don't know how you're going to spend your time with the issue of overtime. Lastly, the Black police office grievance, I don't know how it was dealt with, but it appears that it wasn't dealt with when you look at the discipline numbers of officers by race. And Dr. Everhart's work with the police department around dealing with biases in the department, we never see anything that can contribute to how we can work with her to resolve some of the NSA issues. And I just don't understand why her work is not transparent. And again, thank you for your work. I appreciate you guys. The last question, the only question I want you to answer, do you believe what went on at the meeting with the Judge Oric would allow the city council to value your work a little bit more? Because I would hope that they had an appreciation for how you participated in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your feedback and that comment. That's very well received by me. Director Lawson, did you have a comment or question about that?
Briefly, I just want to take Mr. Sada for comments there. They're actually quite important to our cause. And with respect to profiling, that is the policies that I talk about identifying are dealing with some of the profiling issues. That's one of the concerns we have at CIPRA, and we think there are policies that are practices that are in place currently that cause a problem or some concerns regarding profiling. And we want that bring that to the commission to review those policies and make recommendations.
Right. And then some of the issues that she mentioned, they are constitutional policing all those were constitutional policing issues. Just want to add that. Ricardo, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Assad. I think all that is spot on. And I think when we say constitutional policing, we need to name what exactly that is, right? Because it's just too like general, right? And we know that all of these things are kind of like under it, right? But for the public, we need to be very specific on exactly what we're looking at. I think stop that is a big thing as well, especially now that they've pulled the traffic units, right? And you got traffic units back on patrol. How is that impacting stop data? Are these officers used to, doing patrol, or are they doing patrol with like traffic, stopping mentalities, right? And it's like, is that creating stuff, right? And again, always appreciate lifting up Dr. Everhart as well too. And just we don't want amazing folks and abilities and studies like that have taken place just sit on shelves either. And just we want to keep on looking at that. So appreciate those comments. And yeah, we got our hands full, y'all. And so but we also want to make sure that we're not all over the place and be very laser focused on how this stuff of what our ability is and the things that we can impact through our work. And I think, and I'm sorry, y'all, I've been kind of multitasking, making dinner for a hungry teenager that's on her way home, that if I don't have something ready for her, man, it's been a long day for the family as well. So I was just typing some stuff in the chats, but it looks like you guys all discussed that as well too. And I would just add with the template itself, there's a lot of good stuff on here, and even some of the things that we feel like maybe aren't priorities. I think OPD should continue to update those numbers, but we just need to really highlight the things that they need to discuss and what we get in depth about the discussions that we talk about when we cover this stuff. And then everything else, the public could just review the numbers as they are. But thank you, everyone.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for your comment as well. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Look out for the email with the next steps, but please already start to think about this in preparation for our next meeting, and we'll go over the timeline to accomplish the template and everything that we discussed, the recommendations next Monday. So please, I look forward to seeing you next Monday at 6 o'clock. And after that, I believe we have a commission meeting next Thursday.
Yeah, do you think we could put a draft of the template on the agenda for other commissioners to just kind of chime in?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, actually, yes, Micah, can we have the draft that I have here? I can send it to you and then just include that in the agenda. Can that be a line item in the agenda? Ricardo, are you okay with that? Putting like 15 or 20 minutes discussion on this?
Well, it could either be a line item or it could be part of the ad hoc readout. Because you were
No,
on
I
the
don't want it
agenda
to
for
be
the
a
ad hoc
read.
readout.
I want to,
So the readout can be
We
a
should have
You still have,
discussion.
yeah.
As long as we could have a discussion about it.
long as we
Let's
can
you
have
have
a
a discussion.
discussion. And I really want the public there. Sometimes they leave at the ad hoc readout, so I want to make sure that they give their feedback. Like Mrs. Sada said some really important
Okay.
things. I know other folks have been asking us for specifics. So however it can be, long as it's,
Yeah,
What would you like it to be? Because so
I would
you want it to
prefer
be
a line item for discussion.
no, that's not what I'm saying. I can do a line item, but what would you like? What's your expectation for that line item? Like I have to do a description and
line
say what it
item,
is. Like, what do you want it to be?
the line item would be to discuss feedback on the template as
Okay.
well as recommendations for the opioid MOU. And I can email you
Wait,
a general description you can put in your
perfect.
agenda. And that'll basically be the ad hoc update for the meeting.
That's perfect. And we can put that on the agenda.
Yeah. Does that
Thank
sound
you.
like what you were? Okay. All right. All right. So we're all good?
All right. Good night,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone.
Okay.
All right.
Good night. Thanks, Mrs. Sada. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Right.